Why do I even bother? The thought echoed in my head the second I crossed the threshold. It wasn't exactly a surprise. The tension was practically a family tradition. But this Thanksgiving, this time, I swore I'd keep my cool no matter what. Let me give you the rundown. I'm Sarah, the baby of three. Being the youngest, though, hasn't ever meant getting spoiled or coddled in my family. Honestly, it feels more like a permanent excuse for them to dismiss me. I'm mostly numb to it now. I hit 27 this year, but in their eyes, I'm perpetually the kid. Unlike my older siblings, I don't have a spouse or children, but I've built a life I'm genuinely proud of. I've got a fulfilling job, a tight circle of amazing friends, and an independent streak they just don't seem to understand. For them, the checklist always stopped at marriage and babies. Anything else was just background noise. Thanksgiving dinner has always been this huge production. It's one of those rare occasions when everyone descends on my parents' place. A sprawling old colonial house that's been passed down through the generations. It looks charming in photos, sure, but maintaining it is a beast. I've never liked that house. It feels chilly and impersonal, much like my folks. But it's tradition, right? So, year after year, I show up, even when I'd rather be literally anywhere else. Because, family. I arrived a little later than the others. My older brother Mark was already holding court with his wife and their two kids, loudly directing the table setting like he owned the joint. Then there was Emily, my sister, with her husband and their toddler, always perfectly put together, showcasing their flawless life. My parents were buzzing around the kitchen, pretending calm control while somehow making everyone feel about 6 years old again. I tried to slip in unnoticed, hoping to sidestep the inevitable fireworks. When my mom spotted me, her face stretched into that familiar, overly bright smile. The one that always felt less like a welcome and more like polite tolerance for the holiday's sake. "Sarah, honey," she chirped, pulling me into a hug that felt stiff and obligatory. "So happy you could join us? Go find a spot." Before I could even form a reply, my dad's voice boomed from the dining room, thick with the usual authority he used to assert his position as head honcho. "Dinner's nearly ready. Mark, Emily, get the little one settled, would you?" I hesitated, unsure where to go or what to do. I wanted to say something, but it was Thanksgiving. I didn't want to cause a scene right away. That's when my mom, with her knack for turning everything into a subtle correction, spoke again. "Sarah, why don't you sit over at the little table? We saved a special place for you there with your cousins." I stopped dead. Did she really just say that? My own mother, using that sugary sweet tone, had just banished me to the little table. The one they cobbled together every year with mismatched chairs, flimsy paper plates, and sad, droopy decorations. I glanced into the dining room. The main table gleamed under the candlelight, set with polished silverware and glasses of wine, radiating sophisticated adult energy. My dad sat at the head, looking entirely too pleased with himself, flanked by my married siblings. Clearly no space for single 27-year-old me. I turned back to my mom, fighting the heat rising in my cheeks. That familiar prickle started behind my eyes. The one that always came when they reminded me I didn't quite measure up. It wasn't the first time they'd made me feel inadequate, but this felt different. This wasn't just a stray comment or a disapproving glance. This felt intentional. They knew exactly what they were implying. I managed a tight smile that didn't fool anyone, least of all myself. "Okay, Mom." "Thanks," I mumbled, struggling to keep my voice even. She beamed back, but her eyes held a certain detachment, confirming she didn't grasp, or maybe didn't care, how deeply it stung to be dismissed so casually. It was all about appearances, about maintaining their perfect family image. Without another word, I walked toward the kids' table, my stomach churning. It wasn't that I'd expected VIP treatment, but maybe, just maybe, a sliver of me hoped they'd finally see me as an equal. I sank onto a small plastic chair, wedged between toddlers more fascinated by their Jell-O salad than the palpable awkwardness radiating from me. My younger cousins were lost in their own world, paying me no attention. I stared down at the plate, a messy smear of cranberry sauce next to dry turkey slices. It looked like an afterthought. I could have sworn I saw one of the toddlers flick a piece of stuffing onto the carpet, and a scream built in my throat. That's when clarity struck. This wasn't about seating arrangements. It wasn't about honoring tradition or holiday cheer. This was about them cementing my status as less than. They weren't even trying to be subtle anymore. And right then, something inside me fractured. Quietly, I pushed back my chair, the gravity of my next move settling heavily on me. No shouting, no dramatic pronouncements needed. I simply grabbed my coat from the hook, draped it over my arm, and headed straight for the front door. As I turned the knob, my mom's voice finally broke through the dining room chatter, a beat too late. "Sarah, where are you going?" she called, her tone shifting from hostess mode to confused, tinged with annoyance. I didn't turn around. "I'm leaving," I stated, my voice sharp and cold. "Enjoy your meal." The heavy door clicked shut behind me. The crisp November air slapped my face, a welcome shock. My car was parked a block away, and I practically ran to it, the sounds of my parents' startled calls already fading behind me. I drove for what felt like hours, no destination in mind, eventually pulling into the lot of a brightly lit 24-hour cafe. I found a booth in the back and ordered a hot chocolate, my hands still trembling slightly with adrenaline. I couldn't remember the last time fury and liberation had tangled together so intensely inside me. Predictably, my phone began buzzing nonstop. Texts, missed calls, the usual panicked barrage. A quick glance confirmed it was my family. Mark, Emily, even my dad, all trying to reach me. But the notification that really stood out was from my mom. "Where are you? We need to discuss this." "This isn't amusing, Sarah." A faint, bitter smile touched my lips, the kind that had been simmering all evening. I wasn't answering, though. Not yet. The power dynamic had just shifted. They had absolutely no clue what I was about to do. I put my phone face down on the table and watched the steam rise from my mug. What came next? That was the real question, and I had a feeling they weren't going to like the answer one bit. I nursed that hot chocolate in the cafe booth for what seemed like ages, my phone vibrating rhythmically every few minutes. The messages got increasingly frantic, each one a clumsy attempt to pull me back into their orbit. Mark texted first, "Sarah, seriously not cool. Where did you go?" Emily followed quickly. "Mom's really upset. We just want you to come back." Then my dad chimed in, "Don't be immature. Get back here now." Silence was my only reply. I didn't owe them a justification. They'd made their stance clear when they treated me like an unwanted guest at their precious holiday meal. All I'd ever wanted was basic adult respect. But no, they preferred me tucked away with the toddlers. After maybe 45 minutes, I finally picked up the phone again. The digital silence from my end seemed to be sinking in, making them uneasy. Then my mom's text appeared, and it made my stomach clench. "Sarah, I truly don't understand this behavior. Your siblings are worried, and you're ruining Thanksgiving. Stop making this all about you. You're being incredibly selfish." I reread the message, a fresh wave of indignation washing over me. Selfish? They were the selfish ones. The entire evening revolved around their image, their rigid expectations. I was just a prop in their perfect family portrait. But I was the problem? It was almost laughable. Instead of replying, I just blocked her number. She wasn't going to manipulate me with guilt this time. No way. Taking a slow, deep breath, I tried to steady myself. This wasn't just an impulsive outburst. I had a strategy forming. Every single one of them had wronged me, and tonight I was going to make damn sure they understood the consequences. Later that evening, after finishing my quiet meal and letting the adrenaline subside slightly, I decided it was time. I opened the family text thread, the usual dumping ground for their complaints and announcements. Predictably, there were already about 15 messages focused on me. "This is just absurd. She's acting like such a baby. What is her problem? We didn't mean anything by it. She's totally overreacting." I scrolled through their words, my thumbs twitching. Ignoring them would be easier, safer. But no, they needed to feel the impact. They needed to grasp that their casual cruelty had consequences. I started typing, slowly at first, then faster as the words flowed. This wasn't just about tonight. It was about years of accumulated slights. "You all just don't see it, do you? You genuinely don't. This isn't about a stupid chair at a table. It's about how you've treated me my whole life. Like I don't matter, like I'm invisible until you need a favor. I'm the only one who gets zero credit for not following your exact life plan. Get married, pop out kids, play the suburban game. Well, I've built my own life, my own way, and I'm doing okay, so maybe it's time you acknowledge that." I hesitated before hitting send, letting the weight of the message hang in the air. For the first time, maybe ever, I felt like I was in control. I wasn't angling for their acceptance anymore. I refused to be their perpetual project. I pressed send. The response was immediate, my phone buzzing like crazy, each notification more agitated than the last. The first reply was from my dad. "Sarah, this is nonsense. You're being overly dramatic. Get a grip." Emily was next. "You can't just storm out like that and expect us not to be upset. What did you think would happen? Mark added his 2 cents. We didn't do anything wrong, Sarah. You need to chill out and come back before this tantrum ruins everything for everyone. Every message felt like another blow. They still didn't get it. They were still trying to deflect, making it my fault that they treated me like dirt. I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I'd considered doing for years. I opened the photo gallery on my phone and scrolled back. There it was, an old family picture taken maybe 5 years ago, just before the cracks really started showing. A perfect holiday photo, everyone beaming. Everyone but me, that is. I was there, jammed in at the end, looking awkward. But I remembered the reality behind those forced smiles. I remembered the barbed comments, the subtle dismissals. I selected that photo and without pausing, posted it in the family text thread. This time I added a caption. Cheers to the picture-perfect family, always expert at reminding the youngest where she belongs. Then I switched my phone off. The silence felt profound, like heavy chains had just fallen away. I had no idea what would happen next, but honestly, I didn't care. They'd pushed me past my limit and now I was simply done. I left my phone off for several hours. It felt strange, almost liberating, sitting there without the constant hum and ping of their increasingly desperate messages. The quiet was surprisingly soothing, offering a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in ages. For once, I wasn't the one scrambling to smooth things over. I stayed awake late, just thinking. I could practically hear their conversations, even without being there. My siblings, especially Mark, likely labeled me the family drama queen, convinced I was just overreacting again. But this wasn't manufactured drama. This was me finally drawing a line, and if they couldn't see that, well, the fallout was their problem. Eventually, I plugged the phone in and, bracing myself, turned it back on. The flood of notifications was exactly as I'd anticipated. Countless missed calls, texts oscillating between anger and strained apologies, all wrapped in an undercurrent of sheer frustration. I scrolled through them methodically, reading their words with a sort of grim satisfaction. They were clearly rattled, and I wasn't about to make it easy for them to sweep this under the rug. My mom's text was the lengthiest. I just don't understand what's gotten into you, Sarah. You're framing this like it's our fault when it's clearly about your own issues. You can't just abandon your family this way. You're tearing us apart. Please come back. Thanksgiving is ruined without you here. This isn't like you. Ah, there it was, the classic guilt trip, the attempt to twist reality until I became the villain. They always did this, made me feel like the troublemaker for simply wanting to be treated like an actual adult. Then my dad's message, this is immature. We will discuss this when you compose yourself. And Mark, predictably, if you thought walking out was some big statement, you're mistaken. You're only making things worse. You owe us all an apology. An apology? For what exactly? For finally finding my spine? For demanding to be treated as an equal in a family that only valued conformity? No, there would be no apologies from me. But then I saw Emily's message. It felt different from the others. Not angry, not demanding, almost unpleading. Sarah, I know you're hurt, and I get why, but this isn't how we fix things. You're my sister, and I love you, but you're pushing everyone away. Please just come home. We can talk. It's Thanksgiving, for Pete's sake. I stared at her text for a long moment. Emily and I had always been closer. She used to stick up for me when Mark teased me relentlessly as kids. But now I wasn't sure if I could trust her motives. Not after years of her silent complicity, watching her stand by while I was diminished, knowing it was wrong. Taking a deep breath, my thumb hovered over the reply button. I wanted to explain, to make her understand I wasn't trying to cause drama, but was fighting for self-respect. Tired of being the family's designated child. But I held back. Not yet. Instead, I typed a brief, non-committal reply. I'll consider it. I sent the text and put the phone down again, a flicker of guilt surfacing, which I quickly pushed away. I knew I couldn't return to that house, not without a fundamental shift in their perception of me. I wasn't going to let them smooth this over like another minor family squabble. The next morning brought even more messages. Some were from concerned family friends wanting to know where I'd disappeared to. They meant well, but I didn't have the energy to explain the complex dynamics to outsiders. And naturally, there was a fresh volley of calls from my mom. But one message caught my eye. It was Emily again. Sarah, I talked with Mark and Mom. They're really shaken up, and frankly, so am I. We're family. You can't just cut us off like this. If you don't come back soon, this whole thing will escalate. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. More pressure, more attempts at manipulation, and still, zero real understanding of my perspective. They weren't hearing me. They weren't even trying to listen. I recognized their strategy, the one they always employed. Guilt me into submission, make me feel responsible for their discomfort, when the root problem was their refusal to see me as anything other than their baby sister. I picked up my phone, opened the family text thread, and just stared at the screen. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to lay it all out, make them finally understand why I was done with their condescending treatment. But the honest truth was, I wasn't ready to face them again. Not until I felt certain something had genuinely changed, that they truly saw me. Then my phone buzzed again. My dad this time. "Sarah, we have to talk. You can't keep running. You'll regret this later." It landed like a punch to the gut. The same old threats, the same emotional blackmail. The tension coiled inside me, feeling suffocating. But I held firm. No response. Not yet. The day crawled by. With each passing hour, I felt the weight of their texts, their voicemails, their relentless efforts to pull me back into their dysfunctional pattern. But no matter how many times my phone lit up, I maintained my distance. I had made my choice, and I refused to be bullied back into the role they'd assigned me. As evening drew near, I found myself sitting alone, gazing at the empty space across the small cafe table. An old, deeply ingrained part of me whispered to just give in, go back, smooth things over. It was the holiday season after all, supposedly a time for family connection. But I couldn't shake the conviction that returning now would mean conceding defeat, signaling that years of being marginalized were acceptable, that they were right and I was just being difficult. I thought about that photo I'd posted, the one capturing my forced smile, pushed to the edge of the frame like an unimportant accessory. That picture encapsulated everything. My hurt wasn't just about tonight, it was about every holiday, every birthday, every family event where my voice was silenced, my presence treated as secondary. They expected me to fold just like always, but not this time. And then the phone rang again. My mom. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the red decline icon, but some instinct urged me to answer. Maybe I was finally ready to hear her out, or maybe I was just morbidly curious about how low they'd stoop with the guilt tactics. Taking a deep breath, I hit the green button. "Sarah," my mom's voice crackled through the speaker, heavy with exhaustion and exasperation. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough." I remained silent, letting her words hang unanswered in the space between us. She waited, clearly expecting a reaction, but I offered none. "Look," she continued, her voice strained, "we're family. You're making this far more difficult than it needs to be. I don't know what's possessed you, but you're alienating everyone. Your dad is upset. Mark is upset. Emily?" She trailed off, seemingly searching for the right words. "I'm upset, Sarah." A humorless chuckle almost escaped me. They were upset? After everything they'd subjected me to? They had the nerve to claim they were the injured party? The familiar anger simmered just below the surface, but I forced it down, determined not to let her see how much power she still held over my emotions. "I'm not alienating anyone, Mom," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "I'm just refusing to play by your rules anymore. I won't sit at the little table, be ignored, and pretend that everything is wonderful when it's not." She was quiet for a beat. I could almost picture her processing my words, mentally scrambling for a way to pivot back to making me feel guilty. "You can't just leave us all hanging like this. Your dad worked hard to make Thanksgiving special. The whole family is here. It isn't just about you, Sarah," she finally said, her voice taking on a pleading quality. "You're breaking this family apart. You realize that? I've spent my entire adult life trying to make things work, trying to fit the mold you all designed. But nobody ever actually saw me, did they?" I countered, the words sharper now. "You didn't want me to grow up, Mom. You wanted me to stay the little kid forever. And tonight was the breaking point." Another silence stretched between us, heavier this time. I could sense that maybe, just maybe, it was hitting home. For the first time, she might be hearing the real message beneath the surface. It wasn't just about a seating chart. It was about a lifetime of feeling less than. "I'm sorry, Sarah," she said at last, her voice softer now, laced with uncertainty. I didn't realize you felt that way." "Yeah, well, it took me a long time to realize it myself," I admitted, my own voice softening slightly. "But I'm done pretending it's okay." There was a long pause filled with unspoken tension. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like I was actually being heard, like I held some control over the narrative. And it felt strangely empowering. Finally, she let out a weary sigh. "I understand." I think I do. But I'm still your mother, and I just want us to be a family again. I let her words settle. There was a time I would have jumped at that, desperate to restore harmony at any cost. But I wasn't that person anymore. Painful experience had taught me they wouldn't change unless forced to confront their behavior, forced to see me as an equal. I'll consider it, I repeated, echoing my earlier text message. But the meaning felt different now. It wasn't a concession, it was me setting the pace. It was a signal that they needed to understand I wasn't just background noise, that I wouldn't be drawn back into their toxic cycle without real, tangible change. Okay, my mom whispered. I hope you come back soon. I just want you to be happy, Sarah. I ended the call and leaned back in the booth, breathing deeply. Nothing was resolved. There was no neat and tidy ending. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I'd taken back my power. I wasn't going to let them diminish me anymore. And maybe, just maybe, they would finally start to see me for who I truly was. I put my phone away and gazed out the cafe window, watching the streetlights gleam on the wet pavement. I didn't know what the future held for my relationship with my family, but for the first time in years, I felt genuinely free. As for Thanksgiving, it wasn't ruined, because for the first time in my life, I was choosing to prioritize myself. The rest would have to wait. Sitting there, watching the late-night traffic pass by, a question lingered. Was walking away the right call? Or did I just abandon something that might have been salvageable? Only time would tell.